For our 40 to 49 years young age group winner, put your hands together for Simon Hall. Simon's still around? There he is. Tell you what, mate, you didn't move on the bike. Your bike position is fantastic. It doesn't move at all.
Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Just wanted to give a bit of a race update from last weekend's Thruxton Mass Attack Duathlon at Thruxton Race Circuit. The sort of name gives it away a little bit. Also a sort of GB European qualifier. So yeah, so unusual distances the race. So I think normally standard distance 10k, 40k, 5k, there or thereabouts. Just due to the circuit, the race course, I think it was an 11.4k first run, 38k bike, and then a 3.8k last run. So early start. Race started at 8:30 on last Sunday. So it was a couple of hour drive for me, but sort of aiming to get there for like 7 o'clock. So up at 4, out the house about just before 5 o'clock, and got down there just about 7ish, and maybe just before. So really early start. I'd raced the weekend before as well at Sutton Park at the road relays for Western Tempo, which went pretty well. A few seconds off what I'd done the previous year, but pretty happy with that. Wasn't feeling too great going into that race, so I was really pleased just to have a good solid run out, which I thought put me in good form for racing last weekend at Thruxton. So it was a stacked field, to be fair. Yeah, quite a good field. Got a few guys there that had beat me earlier on in the Richard Shepherd, who's sort of currently in my age group but looking to move up. When I started racing back in, well, my first GB race back in 2016, I think he was second at the World Champs where I was 33rd. So he was there. He'd also beat me earlier on in the World Qualifier as well and won that. Had Adam Dart on the start line as well, who I think was overall winner or pretty high up over in Ibiza earlier on in the year for the World Champs and won his age category there. I think he's in the 20 to 25 age category, so a little bit younger than me, probably half my age to be fair. But so yeah, it's a quite good field there. Jonathan Peters as well was also there, who I know from sort of racing the sort of the GB events over the past few years. So yeah, quite a good field to be fair. So I was looking to hopefully get a good result. Tick off really. The main objective was to get them a qualifier for next year, and then use it as a sort of a build up for the British Champs later on in October. So as I said, race first run went pretty well. I sat off the pace a little bit on the first mile. The guys gone out pretty quick, to be fair. I mean, I went through the first mile in 5:20, something like that, and the guys were up the road a little bit, so I just sat off the pace a little bit, which I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, because there's a group of probably about 8 or 9, maybe 10 in the front pack. I'd sat off the back, but ended up sort of running a little bit in isolation, I suppose, with another big group behind me. So there's probably a couple of us and then another group, but we went through the first lap and was still slightly off the back of the first group. But I think the first group started to fragment a little bit during the second loop, and like I said, the loops were probably about 3.8k I think per loop ish, because that's what the last run was, and the last run was just one lap, so I think it was 3.8k per lap. So sort of worked my way through a little bit on the back end of the second lap into the third lap. I think I'd managed to get in front of Richard Shepherd as well, into the sort of end of the second lap into the third. So I was pleased with that, just to get in front of him. So I think he got a bit of time on me at Cholmondeley Castle going into the bike. So I was pretty pleased actually. I think I split 540 miles. I think I was with the 5th mile probably my slowest, which actually the rest of the pace was probably sub 540. I hit about 550 sort of miles, somewhere around mile 5. Whether that was just a bit of the course where it was a bit more hilly, or whether that was just a little bit of fatigue, or just sometimes losing a bit of concentration deep into that sort of first run. But yeah, worked through, came into transition, and yeah, had a good transition straight onto the bike. I haven't been putting my shoes on my pedals recently. I've gone one by on the Factor, which is great, but it just means actually there's less places to stick the elastic bands. There's no front derailleur or anything like that. So to be fair, I need to spend a bit of time at home and just work out where the best place to put those are moving forward. But looking at the splits afterwards, my transition splits weren't too bad, to be fair. They were pretty much on point. So how much of the benefit you really get, especially when you're doing sort of a standard distance or non-draft legal, because I think if you're doing a sprint race and you really need to get on the bike group, it might be beneficial, but I don't know how much more beneficial it is. I mean, yeah, you're putting your shoes on rolling on the bike, but I've done a few races where that's not gone to plan either, so it's a bit hit and miss really. So but chose to sort of keep the shoes on the ground. Sometimes as well when it's wet, if it's a grass transition or the floor's wet, I prefer that as well, just not getting all the socks wet and cycling and running in wet socks. So but yeah, onto the bike, I sort of came out of transition with Richard, and sort of kicked on really straight away, straight out the pedals, quite aggressive out of the transition. And sort of really worked hard on the bike. Unfortunately, the power meter didn't click in. I'm not sure what happened on that. It was fine when I was warming up, but it didn't register on the bike when I was coming out of transition. So I'm not sure what happened there. But the bike went pretty well. I think the difficulty with the bike was it's a 10 lap, so just trying to keep track of that. But I converted the sort of the kilometres into miles, so I had a rough idea of actually when I thought I was coming in. So the bike went pretty well. I'd actually worked really hard. The course was good. It was a bit windy on the day. It was warm, but a little bit of wind. And actually the back half of Thruxton, on the back half of the track, there's a little bit of an incline into sort of the start finish and the pits. But other than that, it was a pretty quick course. I think I averaged just over 25 mile an hour for the bike, over 40k. So really pleased with that. It's probably one of my best sort of bike performances, I think. Really worked hard. I managed to sort of work my way up through the pack, catching a lot of the guys in front of me in terms of who had a better run. I think Jonathan Peters, he'd got away from me on the first 10k, and I managed to ride my way back up to him sort of halfway through the bike split. So I was pretty pleased with that. In the end, I managed to work myself up to, I think it was 5th or 6th. So I came into transition. The first 3 were gone, to be fair. I couldn't get back to them. But 4th and 5th, I managed to just come into the back of transition with them. Made a bit of a balls up at the transition, to be fair. I think I came into transition doubting whether I'd done the 10 laps, which I knew I had, but I knew I'd passed a couple of people, so I just hung back a little bit, just in terms of before I went into the transition, in case I needed to jump on and do another lap, which was weird because I knew I hadn't. So I'd lost a few seconds there. How much that really affected the final result, probably not, to be fair. But so yeah, I'd had a really good ride. Sort of came up to about, I think, like I said, up to about 6th place on the bike, I think. And then went out onto the final run. I sort of got a bit of a gap on Jonathan Peters, got a bit of a gap on Richard Shepherd. I knew Jonathan was running well. He'd taken a good sort of 30-40 seconds out of me on the first run, so it looked like I'd had a good gap to him. So, but I wasn't 100% sure whether that was going to be enough. So. But yeah, I just worked hard, especially through the first sort of mile, really, just to try and push on and yeah, I wasn't sure whether the legs were going to hold up, but I just worked hard to definitely through the first mile and really pushed on. And it didn't look like I was getting caught by Jonathan and Richard. I had quite a good gap halfway through the run. Although I was getting caught by Jack Ellis as well. I think he'd come in first on the first run, so he sort of caught me at Chomley as well. So managed to sort of hold him off probably till about a K to go, and he sort of come past me, and I didn't quite have the legs to stay with him. So in the end, I was sort of 7th overall, but the real positive was I won my age group, so that was really good. I think a lot of the guys who beat me, there was no one in the older age group that beat me, so I was first 40 to 50, first in my sort of 40 to 45 qualifying age group as well, and first time I beat Richard Shepherd as well, first time I beat Jonathan Peters, so I was pretty chuffed with my result really. I think, to be fair, the bike was the real key to my performance at the weekend, last weekend. I ran well, ran strong, but I just managed to bite my way up through the pack and put enough time in prior to the sort of the last run, so really chuffed with that. Thruxton itself, great course. I think the event itself was a good event. They had a lot of live feed on in terms of like you could watch the race. It was a bit difficult to sort of get a real sense of actually what was happening in the race, but I think it was good to see that they were sort of filming. And I think, yeah, things like the podium were great. Top three all had sort of champagne that they could spray everywhere, like on a racetrack. I think some of the down points of it, I think they only opened up the sort of picking up all your numbers and everything at 7 o'clock. When the race starts at 8:30, yeah, you get in there and you've got a couple of hundred people trying to get their kit and their numbers. Maybe they could have opened that a little bit earlier, but the race course itself, I think it's great racing on circuits like that. I think I've raced at Alton Park a few times, really enjoy that as well. Just the safety, especially on TT bikes, especially with a lot of duathlons coming into sort of October and through the winter. I think having closed road races is just fantastic. No worry about potholes, no worries about the sort of cars. If you get a puncture out in the middle of the road and you're sort of doing a 2-lap 40k course, it's a long way to come back if you've not got the tools with you. So just generally, I think spectating wise as well, it's great that the spectators can see the race unfolding. So if you haven't raced on a circuit like that, yeah, I really must recommend it. I know you've got places like Alton Park that often do races. You've also got sort of smaller circuits as well around the country, but I don't know whether Goodwood and places like that and Silverstone also do them. But yeah, I'm going to have a little dig around as well and have a look at what other sort of closed road sort of races they've got over this winter, because yeah, it's just a nice place to race, and also you don't get all the dirt and all the muck on the roads as well, so unless it's even in the rain, you're not going to get all the mud and dirt on the race course. So it's just generally a really good idea, I think, and I think these companies should look at doing more races like that on them. But I know the British Champs at the end of October is at Grantham, I believe, so that's an open road race as well. So, but hopefully an early morning sort of Sunday start won't be too painful. So yeah, so that's a bit of an update really. After this British Champs, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, and then maybe look at the races for next year, what I'm doing on target internationally, and then also maybe look at some more another bike fit. Tempted to think about having a wind tunnel experience, but I haven't 100% agreed, sort of 100% on that one yet, but depending if I go to Australia or not, I need to save some pennies, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, like and subscribe if you haven't, and yeah, I'll post up some more race footage and training soon. See you all soon. Bye.